Hey, good evening. Today's Bible study comes from Matthew chapter 26, verses 36 through 46, and it reads as follows. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, Sit here while go over there and pray. He took Peter and the two sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. Going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. Couldn't you keep watch with me for 1 hour? He asked Peter. Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. He went away a second time and prayed, My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done. When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the third time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come, and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer. Well, Jesus was at Gethsemane, which was the garden at the foot of the hill, and Jesus was there, and he was going there to pray. Um, he was troubled. He was crying with tears because of his impending situation. He was going to die for us, and although his faith was strong, he was sorrowful and he was hurting, and he took his disciples with him, a few of them to go, because the importance of the three, and I think the reason these are the three that went, are because they saw his transfiguration a little while earlier. But I'm looking up a verse right now in Hebrews 5 and 7. It says, During the days of Jesus' life on earth, he offered up prayers and petitions with loud cries and tears to the one who could save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverent submission. And when you think of that, he was praying hard, and this was heavy on him, but he was praying to the one who could save him from death, and we all know that the Lord did save Jesus from death when he was resurrected. As a man, Jesus was perfect. Um, he he did everything right. Most people think that Christ wept only for the sins or sorrows of others, and that was not correct. Um, as the ugliness and horror of the cross came before him, you could see how he was feeling, and this was a serious situation, and he was sacrificing himself for it. And then it says, and he took him with him, Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, and began to be sorrowful and sore troubled. Um, Remember, Christ often was praying by himself. He went by himself, but this time, like I said, he took comfort with them because this was an agonizing hour, and he wanted some friends, his companions of his apostles. And we forget Jesus came here and was totally human. He was man. See, we think he took over the fact that he was God and he changed how the situation was going to occur. No, Jesus took on the total sacrifice in human form. So he felt the anguish and pain that we all feel. He just knew who to call upon. But in these dark times, in these hours of the last moments of his life, he wanted his friends to go and comfort him, as we all want somebody to be there with us when that time is nearing. Um, I can't think of or remember any time I saw anybody that prayed for Christ or that was invited to pray for Christ when he was going through these ordeals. Um, Peter, James, and John, and James and John were the sons of Zebedee. The three chosen here were more intimate on the fact that they knew of Christ's agony. Remember, they saw him being transfigured, um, and they were right up on it. And they had a little more vision on what had occurred and what was to occur. So in verse 38, then it says, then saith he unto them, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful. He's hurting, even unto my death. He's hurting. Abide ye here, stay here, and watch with me. I'm asking you to watch with me. And he went forward a little and fell on his face, and he prayed, what we all should do, saying, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass away from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt. This prayer is a seriously great prayer. If you remember, Christ taught the disciples to say, our Father. We say, our Father who art in heaven. But if you look at this prayer, Christ is specific when he says, my Father. My Father. That is, he took possession. He said, my God is the Father, and he's the Father of Christ uniquely. You know, he had seen his Father. He had been with his Father. He did not lose any of his divinity, any of it, even while suffering the humiliation of this sacrifice that he was about to do, the agony of this death. And in every instant, there was evidence of his divinity. The one purpose of Christ coming to this world, the one purpose of Christ coming to this world was to take atonement of our sins through his death. And he was doing this for man's sin. And his human nature found the ordeal repulsive. The very human prayer gives an insight into the sufferings of Christ. And then it also enhanced his human appreciation of his unselfish deed. Even at Gethsemane, Christ prayed. And he said, if you notice, he says right there, nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt. He still through this weakness of his flesh, his spirit was strong and in complete harmony with what he was doing. And he said, it be your will, Father. He gave it to him. And then he says, he did say something in there that was also, if it is possible, if it be possible, it says right there, my soul is exceeding sorrowful, even unto death. Abide ye there and watch me. And he went forward and fell to his face. And then it says, my Father, when he says my Father and claims who God is, if it be possible, and we know all things are possible with God, and the answer could be yes and no, it could be maybe. It was possible for God to take away this pain, this situation. But if God would have done that, there would have been no salvation for us. There would have been no heaven for us. If Christ would have came down here wealthy, we would not have known how to be servants. So God did not take it away. The truth is that not even God could redeem man. There wasn't enough things that we could do, nor was there anything else that the Lord had that could redeem man except Christ. So understand how important his sacrifice was. Verse 40, and he cometh unto his disciples and findeth them sleeping, and saith unto Peter, what could ye not watch with me 1 hour? First of all, the crisis wasn't over, and When he went back and found his boys asleep, it only hurt him more because he had told them that he was going to be betrayed. He done had the Last Supper with them. He told them how he would die, and they couldn't stay awake. This was very hard to see. My boys were sitting here, and it must have taken some time for Christ to do this prayer, but he just asked for you to stay with him and stay awake in his last hours. Then he says in 41, watch and pray that you enter not temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Just to make this verse simple and plain, he always solicited for his disciples. And Christ then didn't even say that their spirit was weak, but he said their flesh was weak. He took the faults right to the flesh, where it's always at. And he says, the spirit indeed is willing. The spirit wants to do this. But this flesh, the flesh is weak. As we say, the spirit and the flesh are contrary one to the other. This is a prime example. And he had been in agony of temptation and had felt the awful conflict in his soul. How much more then would be the pressure of darkness upon the apostles, his buddies, his spiritual children, who were so sure of themselves, but didn't understand the troubles that were coming and the situations that were going to occur, and how he had been the prime example of what they were going to have to do because Christ had gone through it himself. So in 42 it says, and again a second time he went away and prayed, saying, my Father, if this could not pass away except I drink it, thy will be done. You ask why he repeated the prayer, but I think his human will was not in yet absolute unison, with the Father. And he was asking him, why wouldn't you if you were human? And in this way, you saw where the first prayer and the second prayer came together. And it's a conditional prayer, don't forget. And if you look at it, the first prayer was positive. The second prayer's condition might be considered a little negative, because it went from if it be possible, and then it went to if it be not possible. And even though I say negative because of the not, he was really just admitting, I know what the outcome is. But he knew that the cup couldn't pass from him. And that meant that the Lord's will had to be done. But once again, he came back and his boys were sleeping. In 43, it says, and he came again and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. Now, there had been some more time that had passed. And although Christ used the same words, the disciples actually tried to stay awake, maybe assumed, but they weren't awake. After the first warning, you think they were probably sitting there saying, ooh, I got to stay awake. But no, they didn't. And he had very strong emotions. And here he's going to start to identify. You remember at the Last Supper, he identified who the traitor was. And in this section, he's going to tell us that. And he left them again, and he went away and prayed the third time, saying again the same words. Now, if you look in Luke, the apostles' sleep is attributed to their sorrow, and that was in Luke 22 and 6. And he mentioned the great drops of blood falling to the ground. And remember, Luke was very detailed, but he was telling you about how hard he was praying and what was occurring to his physical body. The blood, sweat, everything dealt with his physical body and the prayer that he was putting up. In verse 45 it says, then cometh he to the disciples and said unto them, sleep on now, and take your rest. Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Ooh. Ooh, this was hard because at the same moment Jesus was saying to them, get up. But when he came back to the disciples, he said, sleep on. He was telling them, sleep on and take your rest. You were tired. Behold, that my time is coming near. And once again, he's described the Son of Man. And then he says, is betrayed into the hands of sinners. And that's plural. And then he tells them immediately, arise, let us be going. Behold, he is at hand that betrayeth me. Jesus wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. But he went out to meet these killers, these betrayers. The one especially, just how he knew the moment was at hand is no problem, because Christ knows all things, even what is in man's heart. And we all know that. And more than likely, they were carrying some kind of lights to see him, because this was at night. And they came to attack him, and he was betrayed. And you'll see who his betrayer is. Amen.